the Talk Station is proud to present The War Files. The War Files, a selection of interviews honoring our warriors of the greatest generation, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Your name?
Billy H. Williams,
Billy, where are you from?
Lincolnton, North Carolina.
You grew up in Lincolnton. Where were you when the war began?
I was in high school. I got out of high school in '43.
What did you do after getting out of high school?
I went in the Army.
Why the Army?
I was drafted. I got 18 and Uncle Sam said he needed me.
Where did you go to basic school?
Camp Blandon, Florida. That was bad. We had some tough training there. I was there 17 weeks. They made us think we were nobody. But when we got through, they said, "You're somebody now."
What did you train for?
Infantry. I trained as an infantry replacement.
Where did you go after boot camp?
Went up to Camp Rooker, Alabama. Then we went up to Fort Meade, Maryland, and got on a train and went to Fort Lawton out in Seattle, Washington, and shipped out for Okinawa. The big battle was almost over with, but I got there in the last couple of weeks of it to secure the island. I was real lucky. The reason I was a little late, we broke down in the Marshall Islands on the ship. We lost a boiler, and it took about 2 weeks to fix it. And that did good for me, because that made us a little late getting to Okinawa. But I got there, they was still a shooting when I got there, but I didn't get in the roughest of it on Okinawa.
I'm looking at you in this picture. You're carrying a BAR, Browning automatic rifle. Was that your weapon?
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little something about that.
I went ashore with an M1, and I picked up one of them. It holds 20 rounds, and that M1 didn't hold but 8 rounds. And it was a little heavy, but I had a partner that carried a couple boxes of ammo, and I carried the bar gun. That was a dangerous weapon. It's long range. You can do a lot of damage with that. I did mostly run patrols, cleaning up the island, getting the soldiers that weren't killed and getting them shipped back. Just more or less a cleanup. Like I said, I never was in the heavy battle. I was real lucky.
What was it like on the island, and what did you encounter when you got there?
Well, the first day I got there, we kind of got settled in. We didn't have nowhere to settle in. I mean, all the buildings was already destroyed. But I went out on the first patrol, and I went by this bush, and there was a dead Japanese soldier laying there with his gold in his teeth. They all got gold in their teeth. I shot him 3 times, but he was already dead. I was scared. I wasn't but 18 years old.
You know, I haven't asked that question much, but the fear factor, that had to be pretty rampant.
Look, the first 2 weeks I was on the island, I could eat, and I'd go and I'd have to throw it up. I wasn't sick. I was scared, and it wouldn't stay down. I did that for 2 weeks. See, I just went in there. I didn't go in as a company. I just went in as a replacement. But the older boys, they looked after me good enough. They laughed at me for shooting that dead soldier.
Okay, so you went in as literally a single replacement.
Yes, sir.
And were others aboard your ship the same way?
Yeah, but they went different places. Where they sent me, I was the only one went there. They knew that we didn't have the experience, and they looked after us real good. If it hadn't have been, we wouldn't have made that.
The island was pretty much had been pretty much leveled, had it not? There were not much in the way of trees.
Yeah, there wasn't a building standing on the island, not a single building. We went into Naha, biggest city on Okinawa, and scaled over that big rock wall. And it was just, there was one building that just maybe up 2 or 3 stories high, just the corner of it. That was the only thing standing in Naha.
How long were you in Okinawa?
Maybe a month. When they got ready to invade Japan, they fell us out and told us we was going to invade Japan. Well, and what really got me, I thought I had it made then, getting through what I had got through. They said we were hoping to get some of the fourth wave on the beach. We was in the first wave to go in. I said, you mean we're not even going to get to the beach? He said, no, we're hoping to get some of the fourth wave on the beach. Now, that's the truth. I didn't think much of that.
How do you prepare to potentially sacrifice your life? You said you were frightened, but, how do you do that?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. When I first got there, I didn't see no way that I could make it through that. I just didn't see no way. And after that, about 2 weeks, I said, well, I might as well get killed today as tomorrow, because I'm going to get killed. And then you toughened up. You could do it then. You got where you just did what you were supposed to do and didn't think no more about it.
You were near fallen soldiers, wounded soldiers. What kind of an impact does that have on you?
Well, that's pretty bad. I had a real good friend that caught 5 bullets and 7 pieces of shrapnel at one time. And he was in the hospital for a year. But he come back, joined us up again.
When you went overseas, you never thought about when would you be coming home?
No, I didn't even know where I was going. After Okinawa, we kind of thought the war was going to get over. Then they come and said we're going to invade Japan. They said we would lose 1 million men to invade Japan. And they made 1 million Purple Hearts for it. And they still hadn't used all them Purple Hearts yet through all the wars we've had since World War II. They still got a supply of Purple Hearts. We got on board ship to go to Japan, and we got about halfway there. And they dropped those 2 atomic bombs. Mm-hmm. And they routed us around to Korea as occupation troops. We wasn't but a couple of days out of Japan when they turned us around. We dreaded that. We knew that was going to be a bad deal. When you write home, you don't really put your feelings into it. You just tell them what you're doing, and that's all.
You had family at home. Any brothers and sisters?
Oh yeah, I had 3 brothers in service.
What service?
My oldest brother was a radio operator on a B-24 out of Truck Island. My next brother was a P-51 pilot with the Flying Tigers. And my youngest brother was in Europe with 4 of us in. And my dad had a 1A car that was about to draft him.
How was your mother taking all this?
Well, my sister said she rode her bicycle to the post office every day to see if we'd get a letter. It was about maybe 2 miles to the post office from where we lived. I was talking to my sister the other night. She said she still had a lot of letters that we wrote back home. I'll start out writing real pretty, and then I get in a hurry, and she's the only one who can read it. So a lot of times she said I had to read your letters to them because they couldn't read them. Look, this might be interesting. You know John Tunnell.
Right.
Okay.
From Sanitary Fish Market.
We have breakfast together most every morning. He knows I'm a Republican. He said, Bill, Harry Truman saved your life. I said, yes, he did. When he dropped them 2 bombs, that I'm sure that saved my life. And then he'd say it again. He'd say, Harry Truman saved your life, and you didn't even vote for him. I said, John, I wasn't old enough to vote. I was about 18.
18-year-old, and you've been told you're probably going to die.
Yes, sir.
How does an 18-year-old take that?
I was over my scared part, and like I say, it had just about got that I was going to take anything that come.
Was that pretty much the attitude of your fellow soldiers?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Look, in World War II, we had a lot of fellas in our 45 years old with the family back home, Some of them had been in our 3 or 4 or 5 years. They'd been through all of it, And you get in with a bunch of fellas like that, you got to toughen up.
That's impressive. All right, you got diverted to Korea And then what did you do in Korea?
First, we went in and we set up a camp there, and we gathered up the Japanese, and we sent all the Japanese back to Japan. We'd get a shipload and send them in, and we'd gather up another shipload and send them back to Japan. That was my first duty there. We went into Korea. We marched 15 miles into Seoul from the boat, from the ship. Mm-hmm. There was a Japanese soldier on both sides of the road about every 50 feet, all the way in, standing with their backs to us, with their rifles on the ground, the butt on the ground, the whole way. And they would want to turn around and look at us, but they had their backs to us. They had surrendered then, see, and we had to send all them back to Japan. But there was one on either side of the road about every 50 feet.
For how many miles?
15.
How many men were marching into Seoul?
Probably 3,500.
How did that feel?
That felt pretty good. That kind of eased us off.
What was it like after the surrender?
Well, look, you might not believe this. I didn't want to go over there and fight them. They didn't want to fight me. Not the soldiers, the Japanese soldiers. Mm-hmm. They had to. We had to. They had to. I never did hold it against the Japanese soldiers out there in the ditches of fighting. He had to do that.
By the way, were they happy the war was over?
Yeah. They didn't give us a bit of trouble. Not a bit of trouble. I charter fished on the waterfront, mm-hmm. on the ebb tide. I had a Japanese lady in the party one time, and I knew she was from Japan, and I asked her, I said, "You're from Japan, aren't you?" She said, "Yeah, I'm from Nagasaki." I said, "Was you there when they dropped the bomb?" She said, "Well, my mother took me, and we left, but she said, I saw it when it went off." And I said, "Well, what do you think about that?" She said, "Well, it was a terrible thing. It killed a lot of people." But she said, "I'll tell you what, it saved a lot of people, because if y'all had invaded Japan, it was heavily fortified, and you would have lost a lot of people." Of course, she said, "You would have took it. You would have come on and on and on till you took it." But she said it would have cost many a life.
You were in Seoul for how long?
2 months. And then they shipped me up to a place on the Chinese border, way up the northern part of Korea. It wasn't no north and south then, it was just Korea. We was right up next to the China line. And we stayed there for quite a while, and then they took 6 of us and put us on a Japanese air base. Not an air base, it was a training field where they had trainers. They had 46 two-wing trainers. They looked about like our Stinsons. Mm-hmm. And they put us there to guard that, so that people wouldn't haul the stuff off. And we set up a 6-man tent, and I stayed there the longest kind of time.
Roughly how long?
I stayed there till it was ready for me to come home.
When did you come home?
I left the first part of June to come home, and I got home September the 2nd. That's how long it took me to get home. First, we was way up. We was about 600 miles from our battalion, and they sent a plane up for us. But my orders went to a different company, and some of the other boys did too. And the plane left, took what they're supposed to have, and we could still see the plane when they brought our orders over there, and we were supposed to be on that plane. I told the company commander, I said, we had a mail truck up. We're going to take that mail truck and we're going to drive in tomorrow. He said, "You can't do that." I said, we're going to take that truck in tomorrow. Well, we got up and got everything loaded and in that truck, and he come out. He didn't much like it. I said, "Look, we're going." We went by the chow hall, and he had brought up a load of liquor for the officers, and the boys stole it. And they all got to drinking, even the truck driver. I said, "Look, I'll drive." And I drove all the way through them dirt road mountains, driving from where we was way up in the northern part back down to the battalion. It was almost 600 miles.
All right, you got back to your company. Where then?
We got back there, and and got in time to go down to the ship. Well, I was first sergeant when I left. I had been made first sergeant about 2 weeks before I left. I was tech sergeant, and I never did get my first sergeant rating, but I was first sergeant of the company when I left. We went to a chow hall, and we didn't have no chevrons, you know. I had never had any. But anyway, they wouldn't let us in this chow hall because we didn't have our rates on. I said, we ain't never had any. They said, well, you can't come in without them. So we was in our fatigues, you know, so we go out and take a magic marker and make them, and they let us in. The next stop we made, went to the chow hall. They said, you can't come in here, you've messed up your uniform. So we had to go to the supply house and get uniforms that didn't have nothing on them before they'd let us in. That's the truth. Look, from the time I left Seattle to the time I got off on Okinawa was 92 days. Mm-hmm. Most of it was on board ship. When I got on this general ship to come home in Incheon, we made it home in 15 days and 10 hours. Going overseas, we had to zigzag for the submarine, and all of that worked in my favor.
That's right. All right, you got back to the States. Where did you go? Where did you land?
Landed back in Seattle. Then I caught a train back to Fort Bragg. This captain was in there, and I had went through this and that and this and that, and I had one more place to go. And this captain said, Sarge, you want to re-enlist for 4 years? I said, feller, you got to be a kid, and I ain't been home in 2 years. I got to go home and see my girlfriend. No, I don't want to re-enlist. But look, six of us took a taxi into Fayetteville, and the 5 of them got off to take a bus home. I told that taxi driver, I said, take me to Lincolnton. He said, my Lord, that's about 170 miles, you know. He said, would it be all right if I went home and picked up my wife so I'd have somebody to ride back with me? I said, yeah, if you hurry. He got me home at midnight. I didn't tell them I was coming home. They didn't know I was coming home. Wow. And I went up on the porch, and Dad said that Mom said, go let Bill in. Said, Bill's over across the ocean. She said, no, he's on the front porch. I've heard my brothers come in. When they hit the porch, she knew who it was. She really did. I only have one son, but I've thought about it. If he had be over there and me home, and I didn't know where he was at. They didn't know where we were at. You couldn't tell them. I don't see how they stood that.
I understood. Bill, what was it like after you got home after the war, talking to your brothers? Did you talk much about your experiences?
Well, there weren't but 2 of them home. The other one was still in. Look, my youngest brother was a little feller when I left, and the next time I seen him, he was taller than me. I didn't even know him. I mean, it'd been about 3.5 years I hadn't seen him, you know. My brother that was the P-51 pilot, Jim, told me that when they got through with their training, there was 350 pilots. They flew over there on cargo planes, but some of us we flew our planes over, and he flew his plane over. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know all that much about it, I think they landed in Copenhagen. He said when we landed there, the boys on the cargo planes got there ahead of us, and they didn't know that the Japanese had took the base back over. And he was telling this to my dad. He said, Dad, on every one of them, there was a hanging. Every one of them. But then we had took it back before they got there. He said they hung them 350 pilots.
What was the attitude of your brothers when they were talking to you about the war? Were they resentful, angry?
No, both of my older brothers was in they flew a lot of missions. My oldest brother was the radio operator on the B-24, and he was shot down 5 different times. And one time they captured his pilot. He didn't get captured, but they got his pilot. And he said about a year later, they saw this pilot in the hospital. Maybe I ought not even say that. He said they had cut off his ears, they had punched his eyes out with a hot poker. They'd cut his tongue out and pulled all of his fingernails and toenails and said he wasn't nothing but a blabbering idiot. He didn't know anything.
Did you talk with others? Did you talk about much other than with your brothers?
No, not too much.
Why not?
I don't know. We was glad to be home. I got, like I say, I got home at midnight. I jumped in a, 36 Ford. I jumped in it, went down to my girlfriend's house, knocked on the door at midnight. It was about 1 o'clock. Had to go see my girlfriend. That's the first thing I did.
What did you do after the war?
I had a job working with Duplan Corporation, synthetic yarn. They had big plants there. We had one in our hometown, and that's where I was working when I went. They gave me my job back when I got back. I was lab technician. I worked there about 2 years. All I did was kept the boiler water and the yarn flow, and it didn't take an hour every day to do my work, and then I didn't have nothing else. And I'd say, give me something else to do, and they'd say, you're doing a good job. Finally, I said, look, if you don't give me something to do, I'm going to quit. So they let me go to the post office a couple times a day, and I'd go uptown and get me a milkshake and a hot dog and get the mail and take it back. But I finally quit anyhow. But then I took a job driving a truck, driving wholesale groceries, a solid 2.5 ton load every day, and that was so tough. I did that for a couple of years just to prove that I could do it. But then my dad and I built a cabinet shop.
What did the war teach you?
Well, it put me in good shape physically, and it taught me to respect people. It taught me respect. I still think they ought to have a draft. I think the young people ought to have to go in a draft. I really do. When
you came back, you had young people who had not been in war.
Yeah.
What was it like when you talked to them? What was their attitude?
I got a son that's 59 years old, and he just missed it all. He was in the lottery for the last war, and just before they drawed him, it was over with. So he didn't have to go, and he don't know how it was.
When you came home, you put your uniforms away, and other than talking with your brothers, you got on with life. There was Korea and a Korean memorial, Vietnam, the Vietnam Memorial, but not until 2000 did they start talking about building a World War II memorial. Why was that?
I reckon it was because it was so big.
And in your conversations with others that you served with, any similar attitude?
I never heard nobody grumble about it. I know when they brought the Vietnam Memorial here one time. And I went and looked at that, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't think nothing about
World War II.
No, not really.
Bill, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, sir.
You've been listening to The War Files, a selection of interviews honoring our warriors of the greatest generation, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. The War Files is a TalkStation presentation.